Good evening, dear listeners. This is Timothy, broadcasting from my quiet farm. Tonight, I bring you tales of the unexpected from the heart of the wilderness. Some of us seek solace and peace in nature, escaping the chaos of our daily lives. But as you'll soon discover, sometimes the tranquility of the great outdoors can hide chilling secrets that remain lurking just out of sight. So grab your blankets, light your lanterns, and get ready to venture with me into the unknown corners of our world. Settle in, dear friends, and let's begin our journey into the mysterious and eerie depths of nature. Our first story. I'm Elena, a college student from Toronto, Canada. I still remember that cold, haunting night, and every time I do, I get chills down my spine. I was in the middle of a demanding semester, and the pressure was building up. Between exams, assignments, and never-ending projects, I felt a desperate need to escape, even if just for a little while. I had always loved the serenity of the outdoors and decided to go on a solo hiking trip over the weekend. I chose a remote trail that I had never explored before, hoping to find peace, tranquility, and a moment to breathe. It was supposed to be a simple hike, a temporary escape from my academic life, but what awaited me was far from anything I could have anticipated. As I made my way deeper into the wilderness, I stumbled upon something that made me pause. Hidden among the dense foliage was an abandoned campsite. Tents were still standing but torn, and personal belongings were strewn all over the place. Backpacks were open with clothes hanging out. A half-eaten meal sat on a makeshift table, and a lantern was knocked over, its glass shattered. A feeling of unease washed over me as I took in the scene. It looked as though whoever had been there left in a frantic hurry, leaving everything behind. I called out, thinking maybe someone was nearby, but all that answered me was the eerie silence of the forest. I considered turning back, but curiosity got the best of me. I took photos with my phone and continued on my hike, feeling an unsettling chill as I left the site behind. The image of the abandoned campsite stayed with me, nagging at my mind, as if whispering that something was very wrong. As the sun began to set, I set up my camp far from the eerie site I had discovered. But as the darkness settled, I found myself unable to shake off the feeling of unease. I started a fire, hoping its warmth would comfort me, but it only cast strange shadows that danced around my camp, adding to my growing sense of dread. I tried to sleep, telling myself that everything was fine, that I was just spooked by the abandoned camp. But just as I was drifting off, I heard it, a distant scream that jolted me awake. It was faint but unmistakably human, filled with terror and panic. I sat up, heart pounding, straining my ears to hear it again. Minutes that felt like hours passed, and I started to convince myself that I had imagined it. But then, there it was again, closer this time. I grabbed my flashlight and peered into the darkness, but saw nothing. Forest was quiet again, leaving me with the haunting echoes of the screams. I knew that no one else was supposed to be in the area. I tried to tell myself that it might be an animal, but the screams were too human, too full of terror. I spent the night awake, listening, waiting, and praying for dawn. The screams continued intermittently through the night, each one closer and more chilling than the last. My fear escalated into terror, and I realized I could no longer stay where I was. I packed my things hurriedly, extinguishing the fire, and started back down the trail, my flashlight the only guide in the oppressive darkness. The sounds seemed to follow me, growing more intense, more desperate. I quickened my pace, stumbling over roots and rocks, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The screams were now accompanied by the rustling of branches, the unmistakable sound of something or someone moving through the forest. I lost my trail in my panic, finding myself in unfamiliar terrain, the screams still echoing in my ears. My mind raced with terrifying thoughts of what could be behind those cries. what might be pursuing me. I ran, not knowing where I was going, only that I had to get away from whatever was out there. Time lost all meaning as I pushed through the underbrush, tears streaming down my face, every sound magnifying my terror. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I stumbled upon a road and followed it to safety, never looking back, the scream still ringing in my ears. I reached a nearby ranger station, trembling and disheveled. I explained what had happened, and a search was conducted, but they found nothing. The abandoned campsite was as I had left it, and there was no sign of anyone else in the area. I returned home, but the terror of that night stayed with me. The source of the screams remained unknown, a haunting mystery that still sends shivers down my spine. I could never shake the feeling that something was out there, something inexplicable and horrifying. That was the last time I ever hiked alone. The tranquility and freedom I once found in the wilderness were replaced by fear and unease. I shared my story with friends and family, but it became a personal legend, a terrifying memory that I'll never be able to escape. The unanswered questions linger, and the image of that abandoned campsite still haunts my dreams. Whatever happened that night, whatever was out there, it changed me forever. The wilderness, once my sanctuary, became a place of fear, and I learned a lesson I'll never forget. Some things are better left undiscovered. Our second story. My name is Sarah, a young professional from Seattle, Washington. The relentless pace of city life had worn me down. Emails, meetings, deadlines. It was all becoming too much. I longed for a break, a chance to disconnect and find myself again. I found the perfect opportunity in a small, secluded cabin tucked away in the thick woods of the Cascade Mountains. A weekend alone, surrounded by nature, seemed like the ideal way to recharge and rediscover the peace I so desperately needed. The cabin was rustic but cozy, far from the noise and rush of the city. Arriving on a crisp Friday afternoon, I could feel the stress begin to melt away as I settled in. Little did I know, the tranquility I sought would soon turn into something far more unnerving. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the woods took on a different character, shadows growing longer and an eerie silence settling in. I built a fire and curled up with a book, feeling content and relaxed for the first time in weeks. But as the night wore on, I began to hear strange sounds. At first, I dismissed them as the natural creaking and settling of an old cabin. However, the sounds became more pronounced, more deliberate, scratching on the windows, then the roof, as if something or someone was trying to get in. I tried to shake off the growing sense of unease, telling myself it was just my imagination playing tricks on me, but the scratching continued, intermittent and unexplainable. I checked the windows and doors, finding everything secure, but the sounds persisted. I managed to fall into an uneasy sleep, the scratching echoing in my dreams, transforming my peaceful getaway into something more unsettling. The morning sun brought a sense of normalcy, and I convinced myself that the previous night's sounds were just the product of my overworked mind. I stepped outside to enjoy the fresh air, planning to take a walk and soak in the natural beauty surrounding the cabin. But as I rounded the corner, I froze in horror. There in the soft mud were footprints, not animal tracks, but unmistakably human-like, leading to and from the cabin's windows. I followed them with my eyes, my heart pounding in my chest, the footprints weaving through the trees and disappearing into the forest. No one else was supposed to be here. The cabin was miles from the nearest neighbor. I retreated inside, my mind racing, the peaceful retreat now tainted with fear and uncertainty. I checked and double-checked the locks, unable to shake the terror that someone or something had been watching me, close enough to touch the cabin's walls. The day passed in a blur, the beauty of the wilderness now overshadowed by the unsettling discovery. Night approached again, and with it a dread I couldn't shake. The second night was worse. The scratching returned, more insistent than before, accompanied by soft thuds on the roof, like footsteps. I tried to call for help, but my phone had no signal, leaving me feeling trapped and isolated. I kept the lights off, peering through the curtains, straining to see anything in the inky darkness outside. Hours passed in a tense vigil, every sound amplifying my fear. Then, in a brief break in the clouds, the moon illuminated the woods, and I saw it, a shadowy figure, standing among the trees watching me. I couldn't make out any features, just a dark silhouette, human in shape, but somehow wrong. I stumbled back, my breath caught in my throat, realizing that the footprints, the sounds, were all real. Something was out there, and it knew I was here. The rest of the night was a torment of fear. The sounds continuing, the figure appearing and disappearing among the trees. I didn't sleep, didn't dare to, keeping watch until the first light of dawn. As soon as the morning light crept through the windows, I packed my things, my hands still trembling from the night's ordeal. I didn't bother with breakfast or a final look around. I just needed to leave, to put distance between myself and whatever was out there in the woods. The drive back to the city was a blur, the beautiful landscapes now tainted with the terror of the unknown. I never explained the early return to my friends or family, unable to put into words what I had experienced. How could I describe something so inexplicable, so surreal? I tried to return to my normal life, but the memories lingered, haunting my dreams and turning every shadow into a lurking figure. The wilderness, once a place of solace and connection, became a source of fear. I still don't know what was out there, what watched me from the trees, what left those footprints. But the experience changed me, a chilling reminder that there are mysteries in this world we may never understand. I still love nature, but I'm forever uneasy in it, always watching, always listening, never quite at peace. Our third story. My name is Jackson, a forest ranger in the vast landscapes of Yellowstone, Wyoming. For years, I've patrolled this iconic national park, a sanctuary of geysers, wildlife, and vast forests. It's always filled me with a sense of pride, knowing that I safeguard a unique part of America's natural wonders. On a cool fall morning, I embarked on a regular patrol, equipped with all my usual gear, and the comfort of knowing this land as intimately as an old friend. The day started normally, with the chirps of birds and the distant calls of elks. However, as I journeyed into one of the more secluded parts of the park, there was a shift in the atmosphere, something I couldn't immediately identify. Intriguingly, I came across trails I'd never seen before. These weren't the common trails tread by wildlife or tourists. They seemed newly carved, deliberate, and leading further into the dense woods. I reviewed my maps, but these trails were uncharted. A shiver ran through me. In all my years here, this was a first. Compelled by duty and curiosity, I decided to explore these paths. The more I ventured, the stranger things became. Markings appeared on the trees, unlike any natural scratch or native symbol. An eerie silence dominated, amplifying my growing unease. These trails seemed to have a purpose, guiding me deeper into the unknown. I felt as though I was being led into a maze designed by some unseen force. Eventually, the path opened into a clearing. The sight that met me was chilling. Animal bones, meticulously arranged in unfamiliar patterns and symbols, covered the ground. It was sheer eeriness, a macabre spectacle that suggested some dark intent or ritual. I tried to make sense of it all. This wasn't the result of any predator. The The deliberate placement of the bones suggested a more sinister hand at work. Suddenly, I felt watched. The temperature dropped noticeably, and a feeling of being observed crawled up my spine. Even so, I documented the scene, my professional duty overriding my growing fear. But with each passing moment, the forest energy grew darker, the sense of being hunted more pronounced. It felt like the woods themselves were alive, shifting and closing in on me. Soft whispers seemed to drift with the wind, voices without origin or clarity. Then rustling, close, behind me. I spun around, eyes darting, but saw nothing. The rustling persisted, growing louder, more urgent. Fear drove me into a desperate run, fleeing from an unseen predator. The chase was a nightmare. Trees and paths seemed to change, confusing my senses, yet the relentless rustling followed. After what felt like hours, I finally burst out of the tree line, gasping for breath. Back at the ranger station, I documented the day's horrifying events. Pictures, notes, every detail. Yet subsequent investigations found nothing. The trails were still there, but the bone-filled clearing had vanished, leaving my story sounding like an eerie legend. Although my colleagues tried to understand, I could see their skepticism. The incident became my haunting memory, an unsolved mystery of Yellowstone. I still patrol the park, but that particular section, I steer clear, forever haunted by whispers and watchful eyes. What I encountered remains an enigma. Yellowstone has always been a place of natural wonders, but that day I was reminded it also has its dark secrets, lurking just beyond the known trails. And there we have it, my friends. 3 stories that remind us that the beauty of nature can sometimes hide mysteries that are beyond our comprehension. If you enjoyed tonight's chilling exploration, please consider giving this video a like, subscribing to our channel, and hitting the bell notification to stay updated with more stories from the unknown. Whether it's an unsettling discovery on a hiking trail, inexplicable occurrences in a cabin, or the haunting presence in the national park, these stories serve as a reminder to tread carefully and respect the unknown. Thank you for joining me tonight on Ghostly Broadcast, Global Paranormal Station. Stay curious, stay vigilant, and until next time, good night.